Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources, peel back the layers, and really try to discover the essential insights hiding within. Our mission today is, well, it's to explore some pretty profound questions about human nature, our innate sense of responsibility, and maybe the surprising, often subtle ways our choices shape our individual and collective reality. We're drawing from a truly rich source today, a fascinating transcript of a depth discussion on ancient wisdom, which honestly promises to illuminate some timeless truths.
Indeed. You've provided us with a really compelling text, and our deep dive today will focus on uncovering why some individuals, despite clear guidance, seem to miss fundamental truths. We'll explore the profound role of divine mercy that is always at play, even in the face of human stubbornness. And perhaps most importantly, how our smallest daily actions resonate with universal truths, carrying far more weight than we often realize.
Right. And by the end of this deep dive, our aim is for you, the listener, to gain a much clearer understanding of the subtle mechanisms through which we might, maybe inadvertently, hinder our own growth. Also, to discover the incredible transformative power of self-reflection and perhaps even find new ways to navigate, the constant deluge of information and distraction in your own life. It's all about empowering you to be truly well-informed, not just with a collection of facts, but with meaningful, actionable understanding that resonates deeply. Before we jump into our deep dive, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could support us by subscribing to our channel. Your support truly helps us continue these explorations and bring you more in-depth analyses like this one. All right, let's truly unpack the profound insights waiting for us in this source.
Okay, to set the stage for today's discussion, let's briefly recall where our previous analysis of this source left off. It presented a compelling reminder, really, that the ancient texts, in their profound wisdom, offer every kind of example, parable, analogy imaginable to humanity. They make complex truths accessible and understandable in, myriad forms. The intention is clearly to illuminate the path for everyone, regardless of their background or intellectual capacity. Yet, what the source highlighted as a curious and, frankly, persistent aspect of human nature is our often surprising inclination towards argumentativeness.
Argumentativeness.
Yes. It's as if, despite the clarity and accessibility of the guidance, we have this deep-seated tendency to get so bogged down to the minute details, the how or the what-ifs, that we completely miss the overarching fundamental message, the core why, or the true essence of the guidance being offered. The source used a powerful phrase suggesting we are more prone to argument than anything else, indicating this isn't just some casual tendency, but a deeply ingrained pattern.
Yes, it really makes you pause and reflect, doesn't it? It seems we sometimes become so preoccupied with dissecting the mechanics or the specific manifestations of truth that we lose sight of its overarching purpose, its profound why, or even, the initial invaluable gift of the guidance itself. This source truly emphasized a fascinating paradox in human behavior. Despite clear guidance being presented directly, consistently, people often exhibit a kind of passive waiting.
Passive waiting.
Exactly. They aren't actively engaging with the truth or taking immediate steps to act upon it. Instead, they find themselves in this peculiar state of suspended animation, almost as if they're waiting for some dramatic external event, some undeniable proof, or a cataclysmic compulsion to force them into action. This passive expectation is particularly striking when you consider that our own internal beings, our minds, our emotions, our very consciousness, are in constant dynamic motion. Our spiritual and physical selves are never truly passive. Our thoughts are continuous. Our internal systems are always working. We are constantly breathing, reacting, evolving. So this waiting isn't really a state of stillness. It's a conscious, often detrimental choice to remain stagnant amidst an inherent dynamism. It almost mirrors those historical accounts like Pharaoh, waiting until the very last irreversible moment before acknowledging a truth they had long resisted.
Indeed. And the source painted a vivid picture of individuals who, even when confronted with unambiguous warnings and, joyful tidings delivered by messengers, chose to actively dismiss these profound verses. Their response wasn't passive ignorance. It was an entanglement in a deliberate struggle to obscure truth with falsehood. That implies a deeper, more active process than simple misunderstanding. It described how these individuals, rather than embracing the clear messages that resonated with their innate understanding, actively trivialized them, mocked them, and entered into a direct conflict to negate the truth itself.
Wow. So not just ignoring, but actively fighting it.
Precisely. It wasn't merely passive blindness. It was an act of waiting that often masked a deeper, perhaps unconscious struggle to reject an obscure reality. Their inner state was one of dismissiveness and antagonism towards the very guidance meant for their betterment. The messengers came as bearers of both warnings for heedlessness and glad tidings for adherence. But those who turned away didn't just wait idly. They engaged in a profound internal and external struggle to suppress truth with falsehood, choosing to dismiss verses that carried immense weight with, frankly, disturbing lightness.
That's a powerful and somewhat unsettling recap. It sets the stage perfectly for the next pivotal insight. Let's delve into verse 57 because it opens with a piercing, profound question. Who is more unjust? Now, the source immediately clarifies that this isn't just a rhetorical inquiry. It's a foundational statement, a direct identification of the absolute epitome of injustice. It pinpoints the most unjust person as someone who is explicitly reminded of their Lord's verses, presented here not merely as words, but as a zikr, a profound value, a deep reminder, yet deliberately turns away from them. And perhaps even more startling, this person then forgets the very deeds their own hands have put forth. The term hands here isn't literal, is it?
No, not at all. It refers to their inherent power, their capabilities, the full spectrum of actions, choices, contributions they perform throughout their lives. So it's a forgetting of their own agency, their own moral landscape, and the consequences born from their own conscious decisions. It really reveals a profound self-deception, a willful amnesia regarding their own responsibility and the far-reaching impact of their actions.
Willful amnesia. That's striking.
It is, and what's truly fascinating and a crucial redefinition here is the understanding of unjust, or zalim. We often instinctively associate injustice with external harm, right? Acts committed against others. But our source emphasizes that the deepest, most fundamental form of zulm, or injustice, primarily begins within.
Within. So self-inflicted.
Exactly. The most profound injustice, our source reveals, isn't just harming others, it's the harm we inflict upon ourselves. It is not something imposed upon you by external forces, it is an internal choice, a profound act of self-disrespect and self-devaluation. Despite being created with inherent worth, with a pure and natural disposition, what the source refers to as fitra, an uncorrupted inner compass, and being presented with countless avenues to enhance that worth through divine guidance, an individual chooses to act in ways that diminish or negate that intrinsic value. They consistently prioritize, say, fleeting desires, temporary gains, or external pressures over enduring principles and their own self-integrity.
Can you give an example?
Well, the source illustrates this with a remarkably relatable example. Think of a merchant. By choosing honesty and integrity in their dealings, they could naturally become a highly respected, high-quality individual within their community, earning legitimate profits, building a solid, enduring reputation. Instead, maybe they choose to introduce trickery, dishonesty, questionable practices into their business for short-term gain, or maybe just out of greed. In doing so, they are not just being unjust to their customers or competitors, they are primarily being unjust to themselves. They're diminishing their own character, sacrificing their inherent worth and peace of mind for something superficial and, well, ephemeral. This example powerfully articulates how that choice of worthlessness over intrinsic value plays out in daily life. It's a silent internal transaction where our most precious asset, our innate goodness and integrity, is squandered for momentary gratification.
That's a powerful shift in perspective, isn't it? It means the deepest injustice truly begins internally by ignoring or actively discarding the inherent value presented to us, whether through direct guidance, profound reminders, or even the clear promptings of our own natural inclinations. So, what does this all mean for us personally? It means it's not merely about what we do to others, but what we do to ourselves by ignoring the guidance that resonates with our deepest, purest nature. When we act in ways that go against that inner compass, when we knowingly engage in self-deception or compromise our integrity, we are, in a very real sense, committing a fundamental injustice to our own being. This internal misalignment then inevitably manifests outwardly, but its root is always within, in that conscious choice to turn away from what we inherently know to be true and valuable. It challenges us to look inward, doesn't it? Consider if our own choices are building integrity or undermining it.
And this profound insight leads directly to the verse's next declaration, which speaks of a covering being placed on their hearts and a heaviness in their ears, implying that such individuals will never find guidance, even if called to it. Now, it's crucial to understand, as our source meticulously clarifies, that this is absolutely not an arbitrary divine sealing, nor is it a predetermined fate or some random act of punishment.
Okay, that's important. So what is it then?
It's a direct and natural consequence of the individual's own persistent choices. When individuals consistently choose to ignore, reject, or trivialize the truth presented to them, they gradually, almost imperceptibly, lose the capacity to perceive, understand, and respond to it. Their repeated wrongful actions and choices accumulate over time, forming a metaphorical covering over their hearts and creating a heaviness in their ears, effectively making them deaf to guidance, even when it's overtly clear.
Like a callus forming.
That's a good analogy. Yes. And this raises a profoundly important question. Is this covering a punishment imposed from without or a natural outcome of internal processes? The discussion in our source leans heavily towards the latter. Think of it like a muscle. If you consistently neglect a limb, never use it, it will eventually atrophy, lose its function. Similarly, if you constantly disregard the subtle voice of your conscience, if you continuously ignore the clear signs of truth resonating within you, your internal faculties for discernment, your ability to perceive, process, and respond to guidance will inevitably weaken and diminish. The source likened this process to the concept of kuf, often translated as disbelief, but fundamentally meaning to cover or to conceal.
Ah, to cover. Interesting.
Right. When one repeatedly covers their heart with wrong choices, with persistent self-deception, or with a stubborn refusal to acknowledge truth, they eventually lose the ability to hear the voice of their own conscience, their innate moral compass, or the rational promptings that would lead them towards goodness. This isn't divine interference. It's the natural, inevitable consequence of persistent self-deception and moral neglect. It's a self-imposed blindness that blocks genuine understanding.
Here's where it gets really interesting and perhaps a bit unsettling. The discussion powerfully reminded us of Mark Twain's poignant observation. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. This quote perfectly captures the essence of this internal covering or veiling of the heart, doesn't it? It's not about simple ignorance, a lack of access to information.
Exactly. It's about a stubborn, almost willful attachment to self-deception. It's not about what you don't have access to, but about what you do have and how you actively twist, ignore, or reinterpret it to fit a pre-existing bias or desire. Twain's brilliant insight perfectly illustrates that the real danger lies not in mere unfamiliarity, but in the profound conviction that what you steadfastly believe to be true is in fact demonstrably false.
Which is precisely the state of someone whose heart has been covered.
Precisely. They aren't simply uninformed. They are actively and stubbornly holding on to a distorted reality, a self-created illusion. This stubborn adherence to what just ain't so prevents them from ever truly perceiving or accepting genuine guidance, because their minds are already cluttered with self-serving narratives and internal justifications. This self-inflicted blindness is far more problematic and insidious than simple ignorance, as it actively resists enlightenment.
Wow. Okay, so central to understanding this dynamic is the term zikr, which you mentioned earlier. The source really unpacks this, you said.
It does. It unpacks this concept far beyond its common, often narrow interpretation as mere verbal recitation. It's a profound reinterpretation. In many contexts, zikr is simply understood as the repetitive vocal remembrance of divine names or phrases. However, our source reveals a much deeper, far more holistic meaning. It encompasses not just verbalization, but a profound mental, emotional, and spiritual engagement. To perform zikr means to actively hold something in your mind, to truly recall it, not superficially, but to evaluate it as something profoundly valuable, to establish deep connections and associations with other truths and experiences. It implies an integration of that value into one's consciousness and being, allowing it to inform every aspect of life.
So it's much more than just saying a word over and over.
Oh, absolutely. This deeper understanding of zikr aligns beautifully with how the human brain truly functions. Our brains don't retain information effectively through rote memorization. Instead, true lasting retention happens through establishing intricate connections and rich associations. Think about it. When you try to simply repeat a word or a fact over and over, it often fades quickly. But when you create vivid connections, associate new information with existing knowledge, with powerful emotions, or with real-life experiences, it becomes deeply embedded, permanent. This is precisely what zikr entails in its fullest sense. It's not about mechanical repetition. It's about making divine truths and principles so deeply connected to your understanding of reality, so interwoven with your daily life, that they become an inseparable living part of your intellectual and emotional landscape. It's about a deep internal resonance.
Okay, so how does that play out in action?
Well, when we truly embody divine principles in our daily actions, when we witness, say, honesty in the intricate, precise functioning of our own biological cells, for instance, or when we instantly recognize the internal dissonance and injustice of telling a lie within ourselves, that is the truest, most profound form of zikr. It's about living out values, not just professing them. The source offers a very vivid example. The sheer honesty and precision in the functioning of every single cell within us, the intricate and perfect operations sustaining our existence, can be seen as a constant form of divine zikr, an undeniable reminder of the Creator's perfection and truth. Similarly, when we utter a falsehood, our own selves might almost protest or create an immediate internal dissonance, signaling in an inner conflict, a departure from our innate truth. Recognizing this internal conflict, understanding it as a manifestation of injustice within ourselves, and then consciously choosing to align with truth in our actions is the deepest form of zikr. It means truly living the values, embodying the principles, allowing our every action to be a testament to our profound remembrance and appreciation of these truths. It's the practical, lived application of spiritual insight.
So, if our actions, our daily choices, our interactions with the world profoundly contradict what we claim to remember or what we intellectually assent to, then we are, in essence, oppressing ourselves. We're consciously or unconsciously creating that very inner covering or veil on our hearts. This really highlights a critical point. Mere verbal assent or intellectual understanding is profoundly insufficient. True zikr is about a complete and fundamental alignment of our internal understanding with our external behavior. This really makes you deeply reflect on what we truly value. If our outward actions are at odds with the values we claim to hold dear, then we are not truly remembering or valuing them in the deepest sense, are we?
No, not at all. Instead, we are creating a profound internal contradiction, which the Source describes as a form of self-oppression. This internal misalignment, this profound gap between inner conviction and outer conduct, is precisely what generates the covering or veil over our hearts and perception. It's a continuous act of self-deception that prevents us from seeing reality clearly, from truly living in accordance with our innate worth, and from embracing genuine growth. It forces us to ask ourselves, are we just performing zikr with our tongues, or are we embodying it in every fiber of our being? What do our actions truly say about our values when no one is watching?
That's a lot to think about. Now, after that quite stern warning in verse 57, verse 58 seems to take a sudden turn.
It does. Following that weighty warning, there's a powerful and immediate pivot in verse 58, which begins with the profound affirmation, "And your Lord is the forgiving, the possessor of mercy." This abrupt transition isn't accidental or random. It is profoundly significant and deliberate. It serves as a profound reassurance, highlighting that despite human stubbornness, despite self-inflicted injustice, and despite our tendency to turn away, divine mercy and forgiveness are not only ever present, but are absolutely boundless and perpetually available. The very proximity of these two verses underscores a fundamental truth. Even when humans seem to cut themselves off through their own choices, the divine door of return, grace, and redemption remains perpetually open. It highlights a compassion that transcends human failings, always offering a path back.
So even after the discussion of the covered heart, there's immediately this emphasis on forgiveness and mercy.
Immediately. And the Source goes into detail about what this implies, explaining that if divine retribution were immediate for every single sin, every single misstep, it would come swiftly and relentlessly. But instead, a respite, what the Source calls a mulet, is generously granted. This mulet is not, as some might mistakenly interpret, a sign of weakness or inability on the part of the divine. Quite the opposite. It is a profound demonstration of boundless patience, an unwavering commitment to allowing human beings the sacred opportunity for redemption and course correction. If every transgression were met with instant, unyielding consequence, human life would simply be unsustainable. True free will would be curtailed and personal growth stifled. Instead, this respite is a period of grace, a precious window of opportunity for individuals to reflect deeply, acknowledge their wrongs, proactively seek forgiveness, and consciously choose to align their actions with truth and justice. It's an ongoing, compassionate invitation to return to one's inherent pure nature, to rectify one's path, and to benefit profoundly from the expansive divine compassion.
So mulet is like breathing room, a chance.
It's exactly breathing room, a chance, an opportunity. And this concept is crucial for understanding the nature of divine justice. It demonstrates that the divine operates according to established universal laws. And this profound mercy is not an arbitrary act, but an integral, fundamental part of that overarching divine framework and the operational laws of the universe itself. Just as there are immutable laws of cause and effect for physical phenomena, there are equally precise divine laws governing human moral and spiritual states. The granting of mulet, or respite, is a manifestation of this very law of mercy. It means that human beings are not simply helpless pawns in a predetermined script. They are endowed with genuine agency. And with that agency comes a profound responsibility to utilize the given time and opportunity for conscious correction. This mercy is an ongoing invitation for humans to engage their free will in a manner that genuinely leads to their betterment and spiritual elevation, rather than a fixed, unchangeable, deterministic judgment. It empowers us to act.
That truly resonates with the deepest idea of grace, doesn't it? It's almost like being given an unexpected, generous extension on a crucial, life-defining project, even if you've notoriously procrastinated. It's an incredible, often unmerited opportunity. But the critical defining point, as you've highlighted, is how we choose to use that precious time. It completely transforms the concept of divine interaction from one of immediate, harsh retribution to one of continuous opportunity. Imagine you're on a vital project, impossible deadline, you've put things off. Just when you brace for failure, you're granted a substantial extension. That extension isn't a reward, it's a precious, unearned chance to rectify your mistakes, learn, and succeed. So what does this promised time, this mod, truly signify in the larger cosmic scheme?
Well, the source explains that the term mod itself holds a dual and incredibly profound significance, meaning both a promised time and a promised place. This implies that consequences, whether they be beneficial rewards for righteous actions or inevitable repercussions for wrongdoing, have their own precisely designated moment and specific context within the grand tapestry of existence. This isn't about random events or arbitrary occurrences. This emphasizes that the unfolding of all consequences is not chaotic or haphazard. They are part of a meticulously ordered, profoundly wise cosmic design. This structured unfolding applies to every aspect of existence, ensuring that every event, every outcome, every result arise in its proper context and at its precisely appointed juncture, perfectly timed and placed within the universal plan.
Both time and place. That adds another layer.
It does. This precision is a cornerstone of the source's wisdom. It underscores that nothing in the divine realm is random. Every event, every outcome unfolds according to a meticulous divine measure and an intricate overarching plan. This means there is a fundamental reason, a profound wisdom, and a perfect timing for everything, even for the seemingly delayed or abrupt consequences of our actions. The underlying principle here is that the divine operates with absolute precision and unwavering wisdom. There is no arbitrary decision-making. Everything is governed by a comprehensive, interconnected design. This provides a deep sense of comfort in its inherent order, but it also unequivocally underlines the profound seriousness of individual agency. It means that when consequences do finally manifest, they are not out of the blue. They are the perfectly calibrated result of a precise alignment of time, place, and prior actions. This divine measure ensures that consequences are just, proportionate, and ultimately serve a purposeful role within the larger cosmic framework.
Okay, so there's mercy and respite, but also this inescapable appointment with consequences.
Exactly, and this leads to a sobering truth. The verse further states with unyielding clarity that those who persistently and stubbornly continue in their wrongdoings, those who refuse to heed the guidance and squander the respite, will ultimately find no refuge or shelter from this promised reckoning. This stark reality serves as a crucial balance to the boundless divine mercy. While there is indeed a generous respite, a period of grace, for those who choose to continually ignore guidance and persist in self-inflicted injustice, there is an ultimate, unavoidable reckoning from which there is no escape. The phrase, no refuge or shelter, signifies that no one can hide from the eventual consequences of their actions when their appointed maud arrives. Neither physical barriers, nor social status, nor elaborate self-deception, nor the passage of time can shield an individual from the eventual, undeniable manifestation of the divine law of consequence. It ensures that ultimately justice will prevail, and every action, every choice will have its proportional and inescapable outcome.
So it's profoundly clear. It's not a matter of if consequences materialize, but an undeniable matter of when they will. The discussion in our source points out a deeply human flaw. This divine patience, this generous respite, often tragically leads people to cultivate a false and dangerous sense of security. They mistakenly think nothing will happen to me. This is a crucial, perhaps the crucial point for understanding personal accountability, isn't it?
It absolutely is. This really hits home in a powerful way. We often see individuals, even entire societies, taking advantage of prolonged periods of peace, prosperity, or apparent immunity from repercussions. They misinterpret the absence of immediate negative feedback as a sign that their actions are without consequence, that they are somehow exempt from universal laws. This fosters a dangerous complacency, a false sense of invulnerability, where foresight is sacrificed for immediate gratification. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of divine patience, mistaking mulet, that precious respite, for outright impunity. Personal accountability becomes paramount here, because without it, the very mercy intended to grant a profound chance for correction inadvertently becomes a breeding ground for further injustice, leading inevitably to the mod where consequences are undeniable and inescapable. It's a powerful call to proactive self-reflection rather than reactive regret. A constant check on our internal compass before the external one points somewhere we don't want to go.
And that brings us to the next verse, verse 59, which seems to broaden the scope.
Yes, it profoundly extends the discussion from the individual to the collective, stating, "And those towns, we destroyed them when they committed injustice, and we appointed for their destruction a promised time." This verse powerfully emphasizes that the laws of consequence apply not just to individuals in isolation, but to entire communities, nations, civilizations. It serves as a stark historical and prophetic reminder. If the cumulative effect of individual zulm, or injustice, spreads throughout the fabric of a society, permeating its institutions, its culture, its collective conscience, leading to widespread corruption, oppression, and a systematic disregard for truth, well then that collective entity, much like an individual, will also inevitably face its appointed time of reckoning. This underscores a powerful and undeniable principle of collective destiny, where a society's moral and ethical state directly influences its trajectory, its vitality, and ultimately its fate. It demonstrates that the historical rise and fall of civilizations are not random occurrences, but are deeply tied to their adherence to, or deviation from, universal principles of justice and truth. History, in this sense, becomes a mirror reflecting the collective choices of humanity.
That's an incredibly sobering and highly relevant thought for us today. If our individual choices, our personal acts of zulm or justice, indeed accumulate into a powerful collective state, then how truly aware are we of our current societal trajectory? It genuinely makes you wonder what our collective promised time, our moed, might look like in an interconnected world like ours.
It's a critical question. In our highly networked world, where individual actions, thoughts, attitudes ripple outwards through social media, culture, politics, economics, the collective consciousness and behavior of a society are undeniably a direct sum of its myriad parts. If a critical mass of individuals are consistently turning away from truth, acting with self-inflicted injustice, or neglecting their own inner compass, what kind of collective covering are we inadvertently building over our societal heart? Are we as a society perhaps heading towards a maud, a promised time of profound consequence that we are largely oblivious to, precisely because we are caught up in the very distractions and internal coverings that obscure fundamental truths? This compels us to look beyond just individual accountability to our shared collective responsibility for the moral health of our communities and the world. It's a call for a societal self-audit, really.
And the source revisits the concept of zulm here.
Yes, the discussion powerfully reiterates the multifaceted and deeply pervasive nature of zulm, or injustice. It breaks it down into three interconnected yet distinct layers, providing a truly comprehensive understanding of its reach and impact. This isn't just simple wrongdoing. It's a profound systemic deviation.
Okay, what are the layers?
Firstly, and perhaps most fundamentally, there's self-oppression. This is considered the primary form of zulm, involving the distortion of one's innate, pure nature, the fitra we mentioned. This is humanity's greatest injustice to itself. This is the foundational layer. It's about deviating from the pure, uncorrupted disposition, the inherent moral compass and intrinsic value with which every human being is born. This inherent purity, this inner light, is distorted when an individual knowingly or unknowingly chooses actions, thoughts, or beliefs that go directly against it. It's the act of devaluing oneself, obscuring one's own inner light and potential. This self-inflicted harm is considered the gravest injustice because it fundamentally undermines the very essence of human dignity, potential, and connection to truth. It's a betrayal of one's own being.
Right, that internal dimension we discussed earlier. What's next?
Secondly, we have the more commonly understood form, oppression of others. This encompasses injustice towards fellow human beings, extending even to other creatures and the broader environment. This form expands outwards. It encompasses any act of unfairness, exploitation, harm, or profound disregard for the rights, dignity, and well-being of other human beings. But the source expands this vital concept to include all of creation, not just humans, but animals, plants, the entire natural environment. This highlights a holistic and deeply interconnected view of justice, where responsible stewardship of the entire world is a profound moral imperative, and harm to any part of it constitutes a serious form of zulm. It's a reminder of our interconnectedness and responsibility.
Okay, self, others, and environment. And the third.
Thirdly, and perhaps the most overarching, is oppression against the divine. This refers to consciously or unconsciously disregarding divine principles and guidance, or universal moral laws. This layer refers to the act of knowingly or unknowingly neglecting, actively rejecting, or even rebelling against the foundational principles, the immutable laws, and the clear guidance provided by the divine source of all existence. It's a fundamental failure to recognize the source of all truth, goodness, and order, and a refusal to align one's life with universal moral and spiritual laws. This form of zulm is often deeply intertwined with the other two, as a systematic disregard for divine principles almost inevitably leads to patterns of self-oppression, and subsequently to the oppression of others and the environment. It is the ultimate misalignment with the very fabric of reality.
This multi-layered, nuanced understanding of injustice truly makes it less about a single, isolated act and far more about a profound state of being, doesn't it? A continuous foundational choice against truth and inherent value. It's not just a momentary lapse or an isolated wrongdoing. It's a pervasive internal condition that then inevitably manifests outwardly in countless ways. When you consider zulm across the spectrum, self-deception, harm to others, disregard for universal principles, it becomes powerfully clear that it's a pervasive internal condition manifesting profoundly externally. It highlights the immense responsibility we have, not just for our actions, but for the very state of our consciousness, our intentions, our fundamental alignment with what is true and good. It shifts the focus from merely avoiding bad deeds to actively, consciously cultivating a continuous state of justice within our very being.
Precisely. And that leads directly to a central and immensely powerful theme emerging from our source, the imperative for nefs muhasabesi.
Nefs muhasabesi, can you explain that?
It translates profoundly as self-accountability or self-auditing. It's about continuously checking our actions, honestly acknowledging our wrongs, and proactively course-correcting our trajectory. This concept is presented as an absolute cornerstone of spiritual, ethical, and personal growth. It's a rigorous, continuous process of deep introspection where an individual meticulously, unflinchingly examines their own actions, intentions, and innermost thoughts. It involves honestly acknowledging mistakes without self-pity, identifying areas of weakness or injustice within oneself, and then taking immediate, proactive, decisive steps to rectify them. It's not about wallowing in guilt, but about dynamic, conscious, empowering self-correction. This vital practice prevents the insidious accumulation of that covering on the heart by regularly peeling back layers of self-deception and internal inconsistency.
So instead of blaming others.
Exactly. This approach offers a powerful counter-narrative to the common human tendency of externalizing blame. Instead of seeking fault in external factors, in others, or in circumstances, the profound emphasis here is on turning inward. The source explicitly challenges any notion that the divine arbitrarily seals hearts or predestines individuals to misguidance. The implication is clear. If change is not arbitrarily compelled from without, then it must, by necessity, originate from within. This places the full, empowering weight of responsibility squarely on the individual. It's a profoundly empowering perspective, implying we are not helpless victims of fate or circumstance, but are, in fact, active agents in shaping our own spiritual, moral, and even existential destiny. Our choices, made consciously in every moment, are the fundamental catalysts for our transformation.
And this ties back to free will and the respite, the mulet.
Absolutely. This profound understanding underscores a fundamental truth. The divine respects and honors human free will. The mulet, that grace period, is a profound affirmation of this freedom. It's an unparalleled opportunity, a precious window during which we are empowered to make conscious choices. The divine expectation is that we will utilize this freedom wisely, choosing to align ourselves with truth and goodness, to rectify our wrongs, and to continuously grow. However, the source issues a vital warning. If this grace period is persistently squandered, if an individual stubbornly refuses to course correct despite repeated opportunities and clear guidance, they eventually reach a state where they become incorrigible. This refers to a deep-seated, almost irreversible resistance to change, where the covering on the heart becomes so thick that even direct guidance cannot penetrate it, making further correction incredibly difficult, if not impossible, from their own internal state. It's a natural consequence of a closed mind and a hardened heart.
That's such an incredibly powerful and challenging takeaway, isn't it? It completely dismantles any notion of passive resignation, that fatalistic thought, well, if my heart is sealed, there's nothing I can do. But the source flips that on its head. No, that ceiling, that covering, is ultimately your choice, a result of your cumulative decisions. It's a radical call to personal responsibility. It reminds me vividly of the powerful historical example given in our source about the headscarf ban in universities in Turkey. For many years, that ban seemed insurmountable, unchangeable, but those who maintained their principles, acted with integrity, patience, and adherence to their values, eventually witnessed a profound shift when their appointed time came. It wasn't about passively waiting for some external decree. It was about individuals embodying their values consistently, actively living their truth, which, over time, contributed to a collective change that seemed impossible. This powerfully illustrates that individual adherence to values can indeed alter societal trajectory, aligning with the principle that every situation has an appointed time for resolution, driven by conscious action, not inert waiting.
A very pertinent example. And this self-accountability and conscious living are arguably more vital than ever in our modern world. The discussion in the source highlighted a critical societal problem that resonates deeply today: our profound susceptibility to external distractions and trivialities. It issues a potent warning against passively allowing ourselves to be managed by external agendas that subtly yet powerfully pull us away from our own conscious life, our true purpose, and our inner peace.
That sounds very familiar, the constant noise.
It is. This is a very pertinent warning for our contemporary society, constantly bombarded by an endless stream of external stimuli, often shallow narrative, engineered distractions. The source points out how easily individuals and communities can become consumed by trivial matters, superficial gossip, fleeting trends, or endless, often unproductive, debates driven by external forces with hidden agendas. These distractions subtly divert our mental, emotional, and spiritual energy away from our own personal growth, vital self-accountability, and the pursuit of meaningful purpose. It's about losing control over our inner focus, allowing the incessant external noise to dictate our internal state and hijack our true priorities, leading to a fragmented existence.
Can you give specific examples from the source?
Well, to put a finer point on it, the source directly mentions how consuming public discourse can be. Beyond gossip, focusing obsessively on celebrity illnesses or engaging in endless, often unproductive debates, like the vaccine discussions mentioned in the source, can consume an extraordinary amount of our mental energy. While some topics appear important, they can easily spiral into unproductive arguments that ultimately drain our resources without leading to genuine understanding, constructive action, or inner peace. Similarly, a preoccupation with the ailments of celebrities, the latest political scandal or other trivial news, often serves only to distract us from our own lives, our own responsibilities, our own need for inner development. This mental clutter, this constant external noise, actively prevents us from engaging in vital nefs muhasabisi and consciously cultivating our inner worlds. It emphasizes that invaluable mental and spiritual space is frequently wasted on things that offer no true contribution to our well-being, our connection to truth, or our ability to live a meaningful life. It's a call to reclaim our focus.
But the source offers an alternative, right? An antidote.
Yes, absolutely. This leads to a profoundly empowering message. Even amidst widespread negativity, profound external chaos, or pervasive societal upheaval, the individual always retains the inherent power to cultivate their own internal paradise. This isn't about escaping the world, but rather fostering a conscious, meaningful way of living that not only nourishes the self, but actively contributes positively to the world around us. Despite the external chaos, the relentless distractions, or even widespread zulm, the individual retains the inherent unassailable agency to cultivate their own inner sanctity, meaning, and purpose. This internal paradise is not a passive retreat, but a robust, resilient foundation from which one can consciously and effectively engage with the world, contributing positively. It implies that true peace, fulfillment, and impact are not contingent on external circumstances, which are often beyond our control. Instead, they are deeply rooted in the deliberate, consistent cultivation of one's inner world, maintaining awareness and meaningful action even when surrounded by unconsciousness and noise. It's about building an inner sanctuary that fuels outward purpose.
So what does all of this mean for you, the listener, in your own daily journey? It's about recognizing that our celestial journey, our path towards deeper understanding and alignment with truth, isn't reserved for grand, dramatic revelations or monumental achievements. Instead, it is intricately woven into the very fabric of our everyday lives, residing in the countless small, seemingly insignificant choices we make moment by moment to remain conscious, to hold ourselves accountable, and to contribute positively. It's a powerful call to not let external noise define our internal peace or distract us from our true trajectory. This perspective elevates the ordinary to the extraordinary. Our spiritual path isn't just for big moments, it's in the micro decisions to stay aware, engage in self reflection, take responsibility, act with integrity. It's a call to cultivate an inner resilience, an internal sanctuary impervious to the outside clamor, allowing our inner light to shine regardless of the surrounding darkness.
Well said. And finally, our source powerfully reminds us of a fundamental teaching of the Prophet on confronting injustice. Act physically to prevent it if possible, then verbally to speak out against it. Or, if neither is feasible or safe, leave the situation. This tiered proactive stance is the absolute antithesis of passive waiting, of that resigned complacency that the earlier verses cautioned against.
Can you break that down? Act, speak, or leave.
Yes, this teaching provides a concrete, actionable framework. First, intervene physically if it's possible and effective to stop the injustice. If that's not feasible or safe, then courageously speak out against it. Use your voice as a tool for truth. And if even that is not possible or advisable, then consciously distance yourself from the situation, preserving your own integrity and energy. This active, tiered approach is in direct opposition to the passive waiting or resigned acceptance warned against earlier. It empowers individuals to take profound agency in the face of injustice, reinforcing the idea that conscious, responsible engagement is always preferred over inert acceptance. It's a clear and powerful call to proactive moral engagement in the world, to be part of the solution, not just an observer.
Okay. As we wrap up this deep dive, we've explored the profound and often overlooked idea that the greatest injustice isn't merely harming others, but tragically, it's turning away from the inherent value and truth within ourselves and neglecting the profound power of our own deeds and choices.
We learn that divine mercy is not a distant, arbitrary concept, but an ever-present force that always offers a respite, that precious, promised time for change and correction. We also recognize that the veiling of hearts, far from being an arbitrary act, is a direct, natural consequence of persistent choices against truth.
And perhaps most importantly, we were reminded that true remembrance, true zikr, is about far more than words. It's about deeply integrating values into conscious action. We saw that self-accountability, that nefs muhasabisi, is the unshakable cornerstone of a meaningful, impactful, and ultimately fulfilling life, even when the world around us seems chaotic and overwhelming.
So here are some key takeaways for you to carry forward from this deep dive. First, injustice begins within. The most profound zulm is turning away from your own inner truth and intrinsic value, a silent self-betrayal. Second, mercy's window is open. Every single moment offers a fresh chance for course correction. Divine patience is an ongoing, boundless invitation for growth, not a deterministic judgment.
Okay, injustice starts within, mercy's always there. What else?
Third, your choices shape your reality. Your inner state and your persistent actions profoundly shape your perception and your destiny, creating either clarity or a deepening veil of self-deception. And finally, accountability is true freedom. Regularly checking your inner compass, honestly acknowledging your choices, and taking full responsibility is absolutely vital for living a conscious, meaningful, and truly free life.
Great summary. A final thought for you, the listener, to ponder long after this deep dive concludes. In a world that is constantly trying to grab your attention with external crises, endless distractions, and the clamor of collective anxieties, how will you consciously cultivate your own inner garden? How will you prioritize focusing on what truly nourishes your soul, strengthens your inner compass, and genuinely enables you to live a life of authentic, meaningful value, unshaken by the external noise? That's all for this deep dive. If you enjoyed this profound exploration and found it valuable, we would greatly appreciate it if you liked this video and subscribed to our channel. Join us next time as we continue to dive deep into your sources, uncovering more fascinating insights for a truly well-informed life. Until then, keep digging.